Welcome back, true believers. Elite Legend is back in the house for another WWE Elite Collection action figure review. Today we're taking a look at a very special figure, none other than Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. A member of the WWE Hall of Fame, Mr. Wonderful is part of Series 8 of the WWE Legends action figure line, which was recently relaunched as a Target exclusive. Now here we see Mr. Wonderful in all his glory out of the package. You see him with his red tights. He has his red boots with silver trim. Comes with a beautiful Mr. Wonderful soft goods robe. And he also comes with 2 additional fists. There you see the Mr. Wonderful on his rear end. Now let's go ahead and take a brief look at the history of Mr. Wonderful, as well as a retrospective on Mattel Mr. Wonderful action figures. And now for the retrospective portion of this review, we see Mr. Wonderful perched atop of the display, along with the initial Legends release of Mr. Wonderful in the blue robe and the basic Mr. Wonderful. You guys all know Elite Legend says that basics are gross unless it's a character that Elite Legend is fond of. In most cases, it is Legend basic figures. We see Mr. Wonderful in the white attire, which I consider to be his iconic attire. And now we see the Elite Mr. Wonderful figures without the robes. We see the one to the far left is the initial release in the blue tights. We see the brand new Series 8 in the middle with red tights. And we see Elite Legends custom Mr. Wonderful in his iconic white attire. I did get a decal for his rear end, however, it kept falling off. So I have to reapply that. And basically that is a recreation of the basic with these ridiculous knee pads. Now here we see close-ups of Mr. Wonderful. You can see the blue tights is the original Legends release, and the red tights is the brand new one. I don't know if you can pick it up in the camera, however, you can see much better paint detail in the hair of the older figure, and much better facial painting. They used a photo tech on the new release. So not much differences here. You can see the design there on the posterior and the design on the boots. Making his debut in the World Wrestling Federation in 1984, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff quickly aligned himself with Roddy Piper, the Hot Rod, and we all know what happened next. In 1985, Mr. Wonderful would team up with Roddy Piper and Cowboy Bob Orton in the main event of the very first WrestleMania against the immortal Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, with Jimmy Snuka in their corner. At WrestleMania 2, Mr. Wonderful would tangle with the magnificent Don Morocco. Now a full-fledged fan favorite and Hulkamaniac, Mr. Wonderful began to have some mind games played with him by none other than the adorable one, Adrian Adonis, who began to plant seeds of deception in Mr. Wonderful's mind. With the seeds of deception firmly implanted into the mind of Mr. Wonderful, it was only a matter of time before Hulk Hogan and Mr. Wonderful would end up on a collision course. Trouble was on the horizon as Mr. Wonderful and Hulk Hogan battled Bobby the Brain Heenan's colossal tag team of Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. While being double-teamed by the combination of Studd and Bundy, Hulk Hogan inadvertently struck Mr. Wonderful, knocking him down to the arena floor. With Mr. Wonderful down at the arena floor, Studd and Bundy took the opportunity to double-team the Hulkster. After shaking the cobwebs off, Mr. Wonderful would help chase off Studd and Bundy and raise Hulk Hogan's hand in victory. However, it was all a ruse, as Mr. Wonderful had just simply lulled Hogan into a false sense of security. After delivering that devastating clothesline, what happened next sent shockwaves through the professional wrestling world as Mr. Wonderful delivered his patented pile driver onto the immortal Hulk Hogan, crushing the spirits of the Hulkamaniacs that backed Mr. Wonderful just moments prior. Now back in the embrace of the Heenan family, Mr. Wonderful was ready to embark on a huge money feud against Hulk Hogan. And a big money feud it was, as Mr. Wonderful had several false finish victories over the immortal Hulk Hogan. The Hogan-Wonderful feud would reach its high point at Saturday night's main event in 1987, as the two collided in a 15-foot-high steel cage. This match would be memorable because of the too close to call photo finish that saw both Hulk Hogan and Mr. Wonderful climb out of the cage and hit the apron at the very same time, causing the match to restart. Hulk Hogan would eventually prevail, pushing Mr. Wonderful into seclusion. As Mr. Wonderful faded off into oblivion, the wrestling world's focus shifted to a new challenger for Hulk Hogan's crown, that in the form of Andre the Giant, whom famously challenged Hogan at WrestleMania 3 in the Pontiac Silverdome. One of the rumors is that Mr. Wonderful was the backup in the event that Andre the Giant, whom was in poor health, would not be able to make it to the show and challenge Hogan. As we know, Andre would be able to make it to that show, and the wrestling world would never be the same. Speaking of never being the same, Mr. Wonderful returned to the World Wrestling Federation, and this time he was seemingly replaced in the Heenan family by an upstart by the name of Ravishing Rick Rude, which prompted Mr. Wonderful to fire Bobby the Brain Heenan, once again becoming a fan favorite in the World Wrestling Federation. Upon firing Heenan, Mr. Wonderful would find himself under the tutelage of Sir Oliver Humperdinck. It's Survivor Series month, so Elite Legend would be remiss to mention that Mr. Wonderful was a part of the very first Survivor Series, teaming up with Hulk Hogan, Bam Bam Bigelow, Olympic strongman Ken Patera, and originally scheduled Superstar Billy Graham. As we all know, Superstar Billy Graham's injuries prevented him from appearing, which gave way to the magnificent one, Don Morocco. And here we see Don Morocco as the replacement for Superstar Billy Graham. And how formidable is this team? Let me know in the comments below, what's your favorite Survivor Series team? And how does Hulk Hogan's 1987 squad stack up all time? Now, speaking of Survivor Series 87, I can't mention Hogan's team without taking a look at who they were facing off against. And how imposing is the team led by Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, the one-man gang, Ravishing Rick Rude, and the man whom was over like crazy in the state of Florida, the natural Butch Reed. Before we put this thing to bed, Elite Legend wants to go over a couple of things. One of them stands out like a sore thumb, and that is the scale. Now, for a company that likes to pride themselves on their scale, there are so many times that they deviate from things. Here we see Mr. Wonderful is towering over Hulk Hogan, whom is supposed to be 6'7". Now, mind you, Mr. Wonderful is billed at 6 feet. So now here we see in full display, we see Mr. Wonderful, the original release in blue, much shorter than the brand new Mr. Wonderful in red. Now, while you'll never be posing your Mr. Wonderfuls in that manner, one of the things that you would probably want to do is have Hulk Hogan facing off against Mr. Wonderful, and here you see they meet eye to eye. Which Hogan's billed at 6'7", Mr. Wonderful's billed at 6 feet. Now, this is the basic Mr. Wonderful rocking that classic superstar robe, which is a lovely piece. And we see my custom Mr. Wonderful in the new soft good cape by Mattel over on the right. You can see the differences. Much shinier decoration on the Mattel robe, where you have a more muted look on the Jakks. Here you see a better look at the back of the Mr. Wonderful robe. See there, Mr. Wonderful. And you see these designs here. One of the things that I prefer on the Jakks robe is right here. You see how you can tie this. So if you open this up, you can see how there's Velcro here, which allows it to snap in place. And with the tie, you can twist it around and then add the Velcro to give it the look that it is tied up. If you're like the Elite Legend and you don't like shoelaces, you like to wear the loafers, you like to wear Converse where you tie them once and never have to tie them again, you don't want to have to deal with this type of robe that Mattel gave us. My assistant is in bed now, so she wasn't able to tie this robe for me, so that's why we have Mr. Wonderful rocking the open robe look. All right, thank you guys so much for stopping by. I enjoy this figure. While we already have a Mr. Wonderful in our collection, I'm never going to complain about having another. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this figure. What other figures do you want to see Elite Legend review? Are you enjoying the content? If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like, leave a comment. And until next time, make mine elite.